There's a moment I've watched play out in my clinic more times than I can count. A patient comes in, usually somewhere in their late 60s, maybe early 70s, and they sit down across from me, and the first thing they say is, "Doc, I think my legs are just getting old." And I ask them what they mean by that, and they describe it. Legs that feel heavy after walking half a block, feet that are ice cold by 8 in the evening, thighs that feel like they're full of sand when they climb the stairs, maybe some tingling, maybe some cramping in the night that jolts them awake. And then they pause and say, "I just figured that was normal, at my age." I hear that phrase a lot, at my age. And honestly, sometimes they're right. Some things do slow down with time. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. But here's the part that stops me every single time. What most people think is aging in their legs often isn't aging at all, or at least not entirely. A large part of what I see, the weakness, the heaviness, the fatigue, the cold feet, comes down to something we almost never talk about. Not bone, not arthritis, not even muscle loss, though that's part of it. It's blood flow. Specifically, it's what happens when the blood moving through your legs slows down or doesn't deliver what it's supposed to deliver. Oxygen, nutrients, warmth, the raw material your muscles need to actually function. Think of it like this. Your blood vessels are a little like the supply roads in a small town. When those roads are clear and wide and well maintained, trucks get through. Deliveries happen on time. The town runs smoothly. But when those roads start to narrow, when traffic slows down, when some of the smaller routes get blocked, things stop arriving when they should. The town doesn't collapse overnight. It just starts to struggle, quietly, slowly. That's what happens inside aging legs when circulation begins to decline. And here's what I find remarkable and what I want to share with you today. There are foods, ordinary foods you can find at any grocery store that genuinely support healthy circulation, that help keep those roads open, that nourish the vessels and muscles in your legs in ways that can make a real, noticeable difference over time. I'm going to tell you about 4 of them, and before we get there, I want to ask you something. Pull up the comments for a second and tell me, what's your biggest struggle with your legs right now? Weakness? Cramps at night? Cold feet? Swelling by late afternoon? A feeling of heaviness that wasn't there 5 years ago? I read those comments, and they help me understand what people are actually going through, not what textbooks say they should be going through. Now let me tell you why this matters before we get to the food itself. After 60, your circulatory system goes through changes that most people don't realize are happening. Your blood vessels, and you have miles of them, literally miles, running through your body, become less elastic. Think of a brand new garden hose versus one that's been coiled up in the shed for 15 winters. The old one doesn't flex the way it used to. It's stiffer. It resists. Your arteries do the same thing. They stiffen. They narrow slightly. The muscular walls that once expanded and contracted easily become more rigid over time. And something else happens too, a compound called nitric oxide, which your body produces naturally and which acts like a signal to your blood vessels to relax and widen, starts declining. The body makes less of it as we age. And when vessels can't relax properly, blood has a harder time moving through. At the same time, the muscles in your legs, those powerful quadriceps, the calves, the hip flexors, they start losing mass. This is called sarcopenia, and it's a slow, quiet process that begins in your 40s and accelerates after 60 unless you actively work against it. Muscle needs good blood supply to stay strong, and when blood supply falls off, muscle loss speeds up. It becomes a cycle. What you feel is the legs wearing out faster than they should. Climbing stairs leaves you winded and shaky. Walking through a grocery store means needing to lean on the cart by the time you reach the back aisle. Mornings feel like your legs haven't woken up yet, even after you've been awake for an hour. That's not just normal aging. That's your circulation calling for help. And here is where food becomes genuinely interesting because certain nutrients in specific foods do something measurable. They support the production of nitric oxide. They reduce inflammation in vessel walls. They deliver minerals that muscle and nerve tissue depend on. They improve the quality of the blood itself. No single food fixes this overnight. I want to be honest with you about that. This isn't about miracles. It's about giving your body the raw materials it needs to do its job, consistently, day after day. Let's start with the first one, beets. I know, half of you just made a face. I've seen it in the office too. I mention beets and someone says, I haven't eaten a beet since my mother made me eat one in 1974, and I've been recovering ever since. Fair enough. But hear me out because the science behind beets is genuinely compelling. Beets are one of the richest natural sources of dietary nitrates you can eat. When you eat them, your body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide, the same compound I mentioned earlier, the one that tells your blood vessels to relax and widen. More nitric oxide means blood flows more freely through narrower passages. More blood reaching your leg muscles means better oxygen delivery. Better oxygen delivery means muscles that work longer before they tire. There was a patient of mine, a man in his early 70s named Harold, a former high school basketball coach who'd been dealing with heavy, fatiguing legs for about 2 years. He'd chalked it up to age, as people do. His wife was the one who pushed him to try something different. She started roasting beets on Sunday evenings and putting them in a container in the fridge. Half a cup, a few times a week, over the course of about 6 weeks. He came back for a follow-up and he told me, and I remember this because it was said so matter-of-factly. He said, I walked to the end of the street and back twice yesterday and didn't have to sit down. He said it like it was nothing. To me, it was everything. Now, Harold had made other changes too. I don't want to imply the beets did it all. But the consistent addition of a real, nitrate-rich vegetable made a difference he could feel. You can roast them with a little olive oil and salt, slice them raw into a salad, drink beet juice, though whole beets are preferable because you get the fiber too. Even pickled beets, in moderation, carry some of this benefit. A half cup to a cup, several times a week, is a reasonable goal. Have any of you eaten beets regularly over the years? Drop that in the comments. I'm curious whether the people who grew up eating them have a different relationship with their legs than those who didn't. That's probably not a fair comparison, but I'd enjoy hearing it. The second food surprises people too, and I think it surprises them because it seems too small to matter. Pumpkin seeds. Not the orange season novelty item. I mean raw or lightly roasted pumpkin seeds kept in a jar on the kitchen counter and eaten by the handful a few times a week. Here's why they matter. Pumpkin seeds are dense with magnesium, and magnesium is one of the nutrients that most adults over 60 are running low on without knowing it. Magnesium plays a role in over 300 biochemical processes in the body, including, critically, muscle contraction and relaxation, including nerve signal transmission, including blood vessel tone. When magnesium is low, and dietary surveys consistently show that a majority of older adults don't get enough, muscles cramp more easily. They fatigue sooner. Nighttime leg cramps that yank you awake at 2 in the morning? Often a magnesium story. That pins and needles feeling in the calves, frequently related. Pumpkin seeds also carry zinc, which supports tissue repair, and they contain healthy fats and plant protein that contribute to muscle nourishment. I had a patient, a woman in her late 60s named Dorothy, who came to me specifically about nighttime leg cramps. She was getting them 3 or 4 nights a week. Her husband said she would gasp in the middle of the night, and he'd wake up and help her stretch her leg out. It was exhausting for both of them. We ruled out medication side effects, we looked at her diet, and one of the things we added was a daily handful of pumpkin seeds. We also made sure she was drinking enough water through the day. Over about a month, the cramping dropped to maybe once a week, not gone entirely, but her husband said they were sleeping again. The magnesium in pumpkin seeds isn't a drug. It's not going to replace a clinical deficiency overnight. But over time, consistently, it helps the body do what it's trying to do. An ounce or 2 daily, roughly a small handful, is enough. Add them to oatmeal, to salads, to yogurt. Keep them in a bowl on the counter so you reach for them instead of something else. We're about halfway through, and I want to pause here for a moment. If you're finding value in this conversation, I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and stayed with us each week. We cover the kinds of health topics that take a little longer to explain properly. Things that deserve a real conversation, not a 30-second headline. And if you're watching right now, stay until the end, because the fourth food is one that most people have in their kitchen already, but almost nobody is using correctly. The third food is spinach. Now, before you groan, spinach and beets in the same conversation, I realize I'm not winning any popularity contest today. Let me tell you why this one is specifically important for older legs. Your muscles run on oxygen. This seems obvious, but think about what actually carries oxygen through your bloodstream. Red blood cells. And red blood cells need iron to do their job. Iron is the core of hemoglobin, the protein inside red blood cells that physically grabs onto oxygen in the lungs and then carries it to muscles and tissues throughout the body. When iron is low, not necessarily full anemia, but just lower than optimal, your blood becomes a slightly less efficient delivery system, less oxygen per trip. Your legs work harder for the same result. You fatigue faster. They feel heavier. Spinach is one of the better plant sources of iron you can eat. It also contains folate, which your body needs to produce healthy red blood cells in the first place. And it contains vitamin C, which helps you absorb the iron more efficiently. There's also something interesting. Spinach contains natural nitrates, just like beets, though in smaller amounts. So it's supporting circulation through more than one pathway at once. I remember a woman, around 72, named Patricia, a retired school teacher who prided herself on staying active. She walked every morning, had for years, but she started noticing her legs felt unusually heavy by the time she got home. Not painful, just tired in a way they hadn't been before. We ran some blood work and found her iron levels were on the lower end of normal. Not alarmingly low, just not optimal. We talked about diet. She was eating plenty of protein, but not much in the way of leafy greens. Over the next few months, she started making a spinach salad most evenings, sometimes wilted in a pan with a little garlic, sometimes raw with lemon and olive oil. Her next round of labs showed improvement, and, more importantly, she told me her morning walks felt lighter. Literally lighter, she said, like the weight in her legs had been dialed back a notch. Spinach is easy to work into meals when you stop thinking of it as a salad vegetable and start thinking of it as an ingredient. Stir it into scrambled eggs, wilt it into soup, layer it into a sandwich. A couple of cups most days is entirely achievable without making a production of it. Now, the fourth food. I've been promising this one, and I don't want to oversell it because honestly, the reason it surprises people isn't that it's exotic or expensive or hard to find. It's the opposite. It's something most of you have in your kitchen right now, and most people are barely using it. Garlic. Real garlic. A clove or two, a few times a week, cooked or raw, added to your food the way it was added to food for centuries before anyone had to market it to anyone. Here's what happens in your blood vessels when you eat garlic regularly. Garlic contains compounds, allicin being the most studied, that have measurable effects on blood vessel health. These compounds support the relaxation of artery walls, similar in some ways to the nitric oxide pathway we talked about with beets. They help reduce the kind of low-grade inflammation that accumulates in vessel walls over time and contributes to stiffening and narrowing. They appear to support healthier platelet behavior, meaning blood moves more smoothly without the excessive stickiness that can slow things down. Traditional medicine around the world has used garlic for circulation and heart health for thousands of years. And modern research has largely said, yes, there's something real there, not magic, not a cure, but a genuinely useful, safe, accessible food that supports cardiovascular and circulatory health when used consistently. I think of a patient named George, a man in his mid-70s who was a serious home cook, the kind of person who actually owned 5 different types of olive oil and had opinions about all of them. He already cooked with garlic regularly, which made him unusual. When I started looking at his leg health alongside his dietary patterns, he was doing better than many of his peers with similar medical histories. No cramping, reasonable circulation on exam. He wasn't doing anything heroic. He was just cooking actual food with garlic most nights. That stuck with me. The best way to use garlic is to crush or chop it and let it sit for about 10 minutes before cooking. This allows the allicin compounds to form before heat changes the chemistry. 2 cloves a day is a reasonable, realistic amount. Raw garlic is more potent but harder to stomach. Cooked garlic is easier and still beneficial. If garlic makes your spouse move to the other side of the couch, just remind them that you're doing it for your circulation. They'll understand eventually. Now I want to spend a moment on the other side of this, because it would be incomplete to talk about foods that help your circulation without mentioning the ones that work against it. Refined sugar, eaten in excess, contributes to inflammation in blood vessel walls and interferes with the flexibility of arteries over time. I'm not saying never eat dessert. I'm saying there's a reason that blood vessel health and sugar control are so closely linked in my older patients. Processed meats, the heavily salted, cured, packaged varieties, contribute to elevated sodium intake that can raise blood pressure and stress vessel walls. A slice of deli turkey on occasion is not the enemy. 3 sausages at breakfast every morning is a different conversation. Fried foods, particularly those fried in low-quality oils and eaten frequently, contribute to the buildup of inflammatory compounds in the bloodstream. Your vessels notice. And sugary drinks, sodas, sweetened juices, those enormous flavored coffees, deliver sugar without any of the fiber or nutrients that would slow its absorption. They spike blood glucose, which over time damages the walls of small blood vessels, including the ones supplying your legs and feet. None of this is about perfection. I've been a doctor long enough to know that telling someone to eat perfectly is a way of telling them to fail. But moderation here genuinely matters. The daily choices accumulate. Let me give you something practical to walk away with. In the morning, before coffee, before anything else, drink a glass of water. Your body has been without fluids for 7 or 8 hours and your blood is slightly thicker for it. Hydration is one of the simplest things you can do for circulation. Then, if you're able, a 5-minute walk around the block, or even just calf raises in the kitchen while the coffee brews, and ankle circles while you sit at the table. Get the blood moving before you ask your legs to do much. During the day, try to include at least one of the foods we talked about. A small beet in your lunch, a handful of pumpkin seeds as an afternoon snack, spinach in your dinner, garlic in the pan when you're cooking. None of these require a dramatic overhaul of your kitchen. They're additions, not replacements. Try to move briefly every hour, not exercise, just movement. Stand up, walk to the window, get a glass of water. Your circulation responds to movement, and long periods of sitting slow it down significantly. In the evening, a balanced dinner, some gentle stretching, even just seated stretches where you flex and point your feet, rotate your ankles, extend your legs, and then good sleep. Sleep is when the body repairs itself, when circulation does its quiet, restorative work. This routine won't transform your legs in a week, but practiced consistently over months, these habits, the right foods, the movement, the hydration, the rest, build on each other. And the body, even at 70, still responds. Maybe not the same way it did at 40, but it responds. So to bring it all together, beets for their nitrates and their support of nitric oxide, the compound that helps your blood vessels stay relaxed and open. Pumpkin seeds for magnesium and zinc and the support they give to muscle function and nerve signaling. Spinach for iron and folate and the oxygen-carrying capacity of your blood. And garlic for the quiet, consistent work it does protecting your vessel walls and keeping blood moving smoothly. 4 foods, none of them expensive, all of them ordinary, all of them available in any grocery store in the country. Your legs have been working since you took your first steps. They've carried you through decades of days, through jobs and moves and raising families and early mornings and late nights and everything in between. They deserve to be taken care of with the same intention and consistency they've given you. That's not a dramatic statement. It's just true. Now, in the comments, I'd like to know, which of these 4 foods are you going to add to your meals this week? Be specific. I'll be reading. And if this conversation helped you think about something you hadn't thought about before, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. A friend, a sibling, a spouse. People ignore symptoms all the time, not because they don't care, but because no one ever sat down and explained what was actually happening. If you'd like to keep having these conversations, subscribe and join us each week. There's a lot to cover. Next time, we're going to talk about something that catches almost everyone off guard. The 5 breakfast foods that most seniors eat regularly that may actually be weakening their legs before the day even begins. You might be surprised what's on that list. Until then, take care of yourself. And take care of those legs. They've earned it.